against their will. 855, Jews were exiled from Italy. 1096, the first crusade was launched. Now, the prime goal of the Crusades was to liberate Jerusalem from the Muslim rule, but the Jews were a secondary target by crusaders. As the soldiers passed through Europe on their way to the Holy Land, large numbers of Jews were challenged to convert to Christianity or to die. 12,000 Jews were killed in the Rhine Valley alone, and that was just in the first crusade. Skipping ahead to 1227, the church required Jews to wear an oval badge. This requirement was reinstalled during the 1930s. So in 1227, what is that? That's 700 years before Hitler. The church was requiring Jewish people to wear badges so that they could decipher who was Jewish and who wasn't Jewish. Do you guys realize the spirit of anti-Semitism and how it's been working over centuries? 1229, the Spanish Inquisition starts. So this was people that were assigned to search and to investigate and look for Jewish people. So Pope Innocent, ironic, the fourth authorizes the use of torture by the inquisitors. In 1259, the church in Mainz ordered Jews to wear yellow badges. So again, guys, this is 700 years before Hitler. So what the enemy's doing, there's nothing new under the sun. The enemy's been doing it for thousands of years. And we need to understand our history and our past and be able to sympathize with Jewish believers. When we start talking about Jesus and getting excited about Jesus, that's awesome. I'm not saying to be ashamed of the gospel, but understand that if they're not receptive to that, there is thousands of years of ingraining into them what Jesus wants. Jesus wants you to convert or die. Jesus does, you know what I mean? Jesus wants you to give up your Jewish identity and become a Christian. Like this is what we need to understand is happening. In 1347, ships from the Far East carried rats into the Mediterranean Sea. So you know that began the Black Death, right? The Black Plague. Fleas spread the disease from rats to humans. As the plague worsened, the germs spread from human to human. In 5 years, the death toll reached 25 million people. It took England 2 centuries to get back to the population that the Black Plague did. People looked around for someone to blame. Like, how did this happen? Where was this? What brought this about? They noted that a smaller percentage of Jews than Christians caught the disease. So less Jews were actually dying from the Black Plague than anybody else. And this was undoubtedly due to the Jewish sanitary and dietary laws of Moses. So they were obeying what Moses told them to do, and that was actually keeping them safe and healthy. Rumors circulated that Satan was protecting the Jews and that they were paying back the devil by poisoning wells used by Christians. The solution was to torture, murder, and burn the Jews. In Bavaria, 12,000 Jews were killed. In a small town of Erfurt, 3,000 Jews were killed. In Rouen, 2,000 Jews were killed. Near Tours, an immense trench was dug, filled with blazing wood, and in a single day, 160 Jews were burned. In Strasbourg, 2,000 Jews were burned. In Mainz, 6,000 were killed. In Worms, 400. So this is the year 1347. Again, 580 years before Hitler. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. In 1492, Columbus, I believe, under the inspiration of God, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, saw a new world, saw a world that God wanted to bring the gospel to. And he sailed the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria to America and found the West Indies. But something else happened in 1942. Jews were given the choice to be baptized as Christians or to be banished from Spain. 300,000 Jews left Spain penniless. Many migrated to Turkey. Many found tolerance among Muslims, believe it or not. Others converted to Christianity, but often continued to practice Judaism in secret. So we have these dual things happening, guys. God's doing great things on the earth, And then there's this misrepresentation of Jesus Christ at the same time. And I believe if we can get it all together, God's going to pour out a blessing that we have not seen, the latter-day rain, that there's going to be something that happens on the earth that the world, no eye has seen and no ear has heard of what God has planned for those that love him. 1523, Martin Luther distributed his essay, that Jesus was born a Jew. Now I want us to understand Martin Luther, he hoped that large numbers of Jews would convert to Christianity because he saw it so clearly. He saw that Jesus was born a Jew and that Jews should convert to Christianity. So what started innocently took a wrong turn because of the way that Christians responded to Martin Luther. In his 20s, he expected more Jews to convert. So his zeal, he was young and zealous, and he was really expecting under all this revelation that God was giving him, because he really had some great revelation that helped reform the church. That's how we know of the Reformation movement, was from Martin Luther. And so he had some great revelation, and he really felt like the Jews were going to return to the land, but they didn't. And so he developed a hatred for the Jews, as was expressed in his later letters when he was 31. And he wrote, "I have come to the conclusion that the Jews will always curse and blaspheme God and his King Christ, as all the prophets had predicted. For they are thus given over by the wrath of God to reprobation, that they may become incorrigible. As Ecclesiastes says, for everyone who is incorrigible is rendered worse rather than better for correction." So Martin Luther really started to turn his philosophy. And guys, I just want us to understand, because again, this is about our roots. If we in this room, Reformation is the whole, the Baptist movement into the, Azusa, that's how we can trace. If you're in Assemblies of God or in charismatic Christianity or evangelical Christianity, we trace our spiritual heritage back to Martin Luther. Otherwise, we'd still be Catholic, and we'd be, we'd either be Orthodox, like Eastern Orthodox Christians, or we'd be Catholic Christians. So if you came out of that leg of church history, we need to understand the things that got passed down. That's where replacement theology, this is really where replacement theology really got into the Reformed church, Persecution of Jewish physicians by the church. Medicine in Europe during the Middle Ages found itself restricted by the Christian church. The church taught that it was irreligious to seek a natural cure from a physician when one could obtain supernatural help from a priest. Some church leaders criticized medical schools because they taught that diseases and disorders came from natural means and not from the evil efforts of Satan. With medicine in such ill repute among Christians, much of the leadership by the 10th century was provided by Jews and Muslim scholars. So Christians really walked away from something that could have been godly, medicine and science and all that, and people that picked it up were Jews and Muslims and pagan people. Really grabbed things that I believe some of those truths are really God's truths and that we should have grabbed hold of as a church. And so listen to what they said about Jewish doctors. Clergy at Hall complained that it were better to die with Christ than to be cured by a Jewish doctor aided by the devil. This is incredible stuff, guys. I'm going to skip ahead. So in 18th century, it changed. Anti-Semitism changed from persecution of the Jews into a racial thing. Up until that point, it was really a religious thing. Then in the 1800s, it started to move towards a racial thing. So we see there was trying to be a religious cleansing, and then in the 1800s, it's turned into an ethnic cleansing, and we're going to see it turn into other types of cleansing. It's gonna morph into land. We see now that the main thing that's really on the stage right now is between land and the rights to land and stuff like that. So this is what happens in the 1800s. So anti-Semitism, persecution of Jews along racial lines. Subsequent attacks against Jews tended to be racially motivated. They were perpetrated primarily by the state. The Jewish people were viewed as separate people or a separate race. A French Jesuit priest in 1806 had written a treaty blaming the Masonic order for the French Revolution. He later issued a letter alleging that Jews, not Masons, were the guilty party. So it's a similar thing. It's that behind the scenes, there's these Jewish people that are making things go wrong for the states or for the countries that Jamie just shared with us. So we're really going to see that, guys. We're going to see, you saw it in 1967 when 5 Arabic nations attacked Israel, and Israel, one nation, a brand new nation that was 20 years old, stood on all its borders and was actually gained land in those wars. The Arab nations lost so bad that Israel gained land in those wars. And the way that the Arab people processed that is that the devil was helping them. So you guys are going to see the same things same thing. Isn't that the same thing that the Black Plague? Like, how did the Jews survive the Black Plague? The devil was helping them. So the same thing that was being said in 1200 was being said in 1967 after the 7-Day War in 67. Let's just move quickly along here. 1894. Now this, we're moving into the time when Zionism was really birthed. In 1894, Captain Alfred Dreyfus, an officer of the French General Staff, was convicted of treason. The evidence against him consisted of a piece of paper from his wastebasket with another person's handwriting and papers formed by anti-Semitic officers. He received a life sentence on Devil's Island off the coast of South America. The French government was aware that somebody else, I can't pronounce his name, was actually guilty. However, the church government and army united to suppress the truth. Writer Émile Zola and politician Jean Jaurès fought for justice and human rights. After 10 years, the French government fell and Dreyfus was declared totally innocent. The Dreyfus affair was worldwide news for years. It motivated journalists, you may have heard of this name, journalist Theodor Herzl, to write a book in 1896 called The Jewish State, A Modern Solution to the Jewish Question. The book led to the founding of the Zionist movement, which fought for a Jewish homeland, and a half-century later, the State of Israel was born. So Jews in 1894 were being falsely accused of crimes, and state governments were actually covering it up with the Christians. And Herzl saw Jewish men martyred and persecuted and killed in the streets. And that's when he decided the Jewish people need a land. They need a land to stay safe. As long as they're wandering the earth, they're going to be constantly kicked out of countries and constantly persecuted for being Jewish. And so he created Zionism. 1920, the defeat of Germany in World War I and the continuing economic difficulties were blamed in that country on the Jewish influence. One anti-Semitic poster has been preserved from the era. It shows a German, presumably Christian woman and a male Jew with distorted facial features, a coffin, and the word Deutschland, which means Germany. So they were blaming the defeat of World War I on the Jewish people living in Germany. 1920 and 30s, Hitler had published Mein Kampf in 1928. In this document, you guys may have heard of, I think that translated as The Struggle, which ironically the Muslims have that whole thing going on too, as in addition to Hitler. But in it, Hitler wrote, "Today I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord." So that was written in Hitler's book. In 1939, on November 9th, the Nazi government in Germany sent stormtroopers, the SS, and the Hitler Youth on a pogrom that killed 91 Jews, injured hundreds, burned 177 synagogues, and looted 7,500 Jewish stores. Broken glass could be seen everywhere. The glass gave the event its name, Kristallnacht. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, Kristallnacht. It's the night of broken glass. So if you have a Jewish friend, that's something that you can talk to them about. They'll be celebrating that November 9th. They will remember in 1938 what they call Kristallnacht, and the night of the broken glass. 1939, the Holocaust, the Shoah. This was the systematic extermination of Jews in Germany. The process only ended in 1945, so it lasted about 6 years with the conclusion of World War II.